Welcome to TM470 second tutorial. Getting started with project development for the Computing and IT project. This tutorial is a talk-through for visually impaired students or those who prefer to listen to the tutorial. Students are encouraged to discuss all aspects of this tutorial in the module forum or tutor group forum. This tutorial is an example of students' notes as they start planning their project in more detail. It's for discussion. It has many good points, but some are not so good. This continues developing the same examples as the first tutorial. It is not a template that must be followed, and it is not an example of the first assignment, TMA01. Discuss what are the strengths and weaknesses of each example. This student will iterate through these ideas several times as they develop and then use these materials to write their first assignment. Systematic planning as early as possible in a project is an important foundation for a successful project. An effective schedule needs to be a realistic schedule based on facts and careful evaluation. You cannot plan your schedule until you've completed all these initial tasks. It needs to be firmly based on the project aims. It helps promote a disciplined approach. It allows problems to be anticipated. It concentrates attention on key decisions. It provides a basis for monitoring and control. It improves the confidence and understanding of those involved, but is flexible enough to cope with any problems. And a reference to where you will find further information in the course materials. The working title and the project statement, what will it deliver? The title should convey clearly the purpose of the project. It's not an opportunity for playing with words. The student has suggested a multi-column journal diary with images and maps. The project statement, what will it deliver? A brief statement that briefly and accurately describes the purpose of the project in terms of what will be delivered. So the student's view of this: a computer application to act as a multi-column diary, log and planner. All entries will be searchable and sortable. All entries will be formatted using HTML and CSS. All photographs will be automatically added as entries for the day they were taken. GPS tracks will be automatically added as a map entry for the day it was recorded. Any set of selected entries, including photographs and maps, can be exported as an HTML document or set of HTML documents. The application should work both as a standalone desktop system and via a network from a server. The database containing all entries should be securely encrypted when not in use. We then need a statement of how the project fits and supports your degree pathway. And this student is doing the BSc Honours Computing and IT with a web development focus, and says all my proposals are central to this focus. How this project will enhance your portfolio for job applications or career advancement. I hope to develop a career in web application design and development. The emphasis is on dynamic applications. All aspects of this project are crucial to this type of job and should make my job application stand out. Why is this a problem that needs solving, and what are the benefits of solving this problem? What plausible alternatives have been considered? I first started looking for a multi-column diary, planner and journal when I was studying several modules at the same time and needed to keep track of each as well as family activities and some work. I also wanted my photographs and GPS tracks to be automatically added alongside my journal notes. As I searched, I noted that many other people were looking for a very similar application and not finding one. Those that were available didn't have all the facilities I wanted, were limited to one platform, and cost too much. Further thoughts from the student: need to ask others if they would find such an application useful. Would other students want a similar application? Need to keep a record of the sites I visited looking for such an application. Need to save references for them. Next aspect. What are the key ICT aspects of this problem? Designing a web browser using interface with HTML, CSS and JavaScript. Integrating an HTML inline editor. A database to store data. Developing the code in Python 3 to perform the application logic to search and display existing data. Developing code to extract EXIF data from images and add data records for each image. Developing code to extract data from the GPS tracks and add data records for each track, as well as integrating the code to display the track on a map. What is your existing knowledge of this problem? I have first-hand experience of keeping 5 separate journals at the same time, plus a planning diary, and having to manually add images and the code to create a map from a GPS track. I have an ongoing need to use a single application for this purpose. And an important aspect: what are the core aspects of your Level 3 modules that you will be developing? From the module TM470 Web, Mobile and Cloud Technologies, from Block 1 I will need to evaluate how the web page of the user interface communicates with the server, evaluating SOAP, XML, REST and JSON, extending this to work with an inline editor. I will need to extend Part 4 of Block 1. The HTML my application needs to be updated to use the latest HTML5 and CSS3 in a fully responsive design, and to be fully accessible to users with disabilities. From Block 3, Part 3, the mobile web, the application will run on both desktop and mobile devices, use the latest HTML5 and CSS3 in a fully responsive design, and to be fully accessible to users with disabilities. I will consider the use of AMP as well. Block 3, Part 4, developing mobile apps. I plan to develop this as a networked web app to make it easier to use on multiple devices. I will need to extend this to consider how to run the application from a local web server. And from Block 1 Part 5, Web Security and Encryption, I will need to apply all the security techniques from this section. I will need to use security certificates for HTTPS on the server, and I will need to encrypt the database. Core aspects from TM471 Data Management and Analysis. From Part 3 Data Preparation, using the concepts from this section to capture and process the data to ensure that the data stored is secured and cannot be used to attack the server or another user. And from Part 8 Introduction to Relational Databases, I will be using this section as a basis for designing and developing the database that my application will need. And from a third module at Level 3, from TM470 Interaction Design and User Experience, I will be using almost all sections that I studied in TM470 to guide the design and planning of the user interface for my application, extending this from initial paper designs to static web page designs for both desktop and mobile using HTML5 and CSS3. I will also be using the methods I studied in TM356 for evaluating and developing my designs through several iterations. The dynamic working application will then use the interface designs developed in this way. How will you evaluate each aspect of the project? Although I will be the primary user, I will need to ask others to test the overall usability of the application. I will use the concepts from TM356 interaction design and the user experience to guide this testing and development. Each aspect of the application will need to be developed and tested with typical and extreme data. This will include testing to ensure that the data cannot become corrupted or inadvertently lost, such as when a web browser window is closed without first saving the data on it. Next, splitting the project into its main requirements and components, a top-down analysis. The Python server receives a request for specified data. Python server extracts data from the database, writes and returns the HTML code plus JavaScript plus data to page. User edits data using inline editor. JavaScript returns edited data to server. Server checks data, identifies data, and updates database. Python server receives a request for specified data. Request for data by column, by date, by text search, by flag, and in combination. Request for above data to be displayed in a diary format where all dates in a period are selected are displayed so that new data for that column and date can be added. A request to display column names. Return the form to select column names to be displayed or add new columns. Request to flag a data item, for example, to do, done, urgent, and so on. Request to delete a data item, but I still need to make some more updates to this section. It's not complete yet. Data analysis. What are the key data items that need to be processed in order for this application to work? Note to self to use concepts from TM351, Data Management and Analysis. Each data item will have the following properties. A unique ID, could be the row ID, or can these change? Or a hash. A date, do I need time as well? Images might need date and time from EXIF. Column name, heading, topic, course, family, etc. Continuing, the HTML content, optional, as an image might not have an HTML description. Actions, flags needed, such as to do, event to attend, top priority, optional. The pathway to an image or GPS track, optional. Question, do I need a separate table of column names, or can I extract unique column names each time, and would there be a processing time penalty for this? How will these data items be stored? Not sure. Database needs to evaluate strengths and weaknesses of the databases I could use using concepts from TM351, Data Management and Analysis. I know Python works well with SQLite, much easier to use for a standalone system or for others to set up on their local network. SQLite is very simple to securely backup. Copy the database file, encrypt it, store it. Analysis, which components are especially critical to the project. Integrating the inline HTML editor so that multiple editable windows can be on the same page. Saving data while avoiding using multiple forms. Forms with submit buttons are too inconvenient. Displaying the saved data in a format that can be edited again. Right, good start there. Analysis. Can the project be developed as a series of stages, with each stage having an identifiable endpoint? The basic stage, the core application, is editing 2 columns of data, a 2-column calendar, saving and displaying data, sorting and searching, re-editing. The next stage would be to allow the user to add as many other columns as they wish, selecting which columns to display. Then adding images automatically, possibly video as well. Then adding GPS tracks automatically with display of the track in a map inside the application display. Possibly linking images to a point on the map, but I think this would be too much for this project this year. What assumptions are you making about your project development? The demonstrations for inline HTML editors all seem to be based on a single editable element on the page, or several, but all coded by hand. I'm assuming that I can work out how to dynamically create, say, a matrix of 8 columns for the month ahead, so 240 separate editable items on the page. If I cannot do this, the project is dead in the water, so this is priority number 1. I need to work out how to extract EXIF data from each image. I need to work out how to extract data from a GPS track and the best way of creating a map of that track automatically and for free. What are the biggest plausible risks to the development of this project? The biggest risk is finding that the inline editors won't work with dynamic content. The second is catching COVID and not being able to work for a month. Hopefully a vaccine will greatly reduce that risk. My other activities have been greatly reduced by COVID, so I have more time than I might have expected. I already have automatic backup systems in place, so the risks of losing more than 1 day of work is slight. And a reference to risk assessment in the module content. Analysis. Which aspects are key to meeting each of the learning outcomes? So for knowledge and understanding, you should be able to demonstrate and apply a systematic understanding of the fundamental technical concepts and principles relevant to your project. This should come from the planning, design and development of the application using Python, HTML, CSS, JavaScript and a database. This will also need a clear focus on the methods and content of my level 3 modules, showing how I am building on those concepts. Cognitive skills. You should be able to develop and demonstrate the ability to identify and refine the goals and content of your project. So far I've developed an overview of the project that should enable further development of goals and content. You should be able to identify, list and justify the resources, skills and activities needed to carry out the project successfully, and identify and address any associated risks. I've identified what I think are the key risks and an overall structure for the project. I still need to list and justify the initial resources, skills and activities for the first stage. And you need to demonstrate that you can gather, analyze and evaluate relevant information to successfully complete the project. And the student has started with inline editors. See later. Critically review how you've tackled the project so far. Now this is an important aspect. You critically review everything as you do it, as you proceed. It's not something you do just at the end. So the student, in reviewing what I've done so far, I keep going through and adding new details to my plan so far, slowly expanding it as a new idea in one section suggests more changes in another section. Listing all the different aspects from the module materials has provided a very useful set of headings under which to plan the project's outline. I now have a much better idea of what I am planning to do than I did at the start. Key skills to note. You should be able to develop and demonstrate the ability to make effective use of a variety of information sources, including the Internet, demonstrating awareness of the credibility of the source, communicate information, ideas, problems and solutions clearly, learn independently and reflect on what has been done with a view to improving skills and knowledge. Now, note that you have to do this and re-evaluate it constantly throughout this course, not just at the end. And the student has noted the need to do this right from the start. Professional and practical skills. You should be able to develop and demonstrate the ability to plan and organize your work appropriately and keep systematic records of plans, progress and outcomes. The student hopes that the initial organization and the development of this plan is starting to demonstrate that they can plan their project. Professional and practical skills continue. Identify and address the legal, social, ethical and professional issues that may arise during the development and use of computing and IT systems. Note that these are best identified in the project at the outset so that they become built into the project. Student, I think it will be important to ensure security of data in database, especially if data about people is being recorded or personal confidential data. There may be license conditions attached to software such as Python modules, JavaScript, especially the inline editors, maps, for example Google Maps and leaflet maps. And ensuring that the screen display and user interface meets all the requirements for users with disabilities. Professional and practical skills. Analyze a practical problem and devise and implement a solution, building on the knowledge and skills developed through your earlier OU studies and experience. The problem is a real practical one with well-defined boundaries. It's based firmly on the core aspects of earlier modules, plus further extension through self-study. Time available, estimating all the constraints on your time. Family time each day takes priority 7 to 9 a.m., 4:30 to 7 p.m. and all day on Sunday, plus 1 day a week in the school holidays. Work contracts take priority 9 a.m. to 12 a.m. but an unknown quantity. Exercise, aim for 1 or 2 hours a day, but I often find exercising is the best time to do problem solving as well. Holiday may not take place this year, but plan time for 1 week in June and 1 week in August. Aim for a minimum of 12 hours each week to move the project ahead in case I have less time over the summer. A target is a 2-hour block of time each day except Sunday for project development. So analysis, estimating the time requirements. When you produce your schedule, we suggest you work backwards from the EMA submission deadline, which cannot be moved. Include some slack to cater for the unexpected, such as minor sickness, in order to ensure you finish on time. You may use this format of your choosing for the schedule as long as it is clear and can be inserted as text or image or a table in your TMA document, not as a linked object. Students still need to do this, planning for a minimum of 12 hours a week to move the project ahead right from the start and build slack into the month before the EMA submission deadline. Analysis, review and reflection. Is it doable within the time and skills constraints? Student, I think this is doable, especially if I get the main core of the project fully working, tested and written up, as a first draft before I add the image and GPS track processing. Checking the time schedule meets the TMA schedule. I need to check that what I plan to have done allows me to submit what is required for TMAs 2 and 3. Analysis. Is there a development lifecycle that would best support this project? Now this item is deliberately towards the end of the list of tasks. You need a good understanding of the structure of your project before you can start to analyze the best approach to developing it. So do read again the references to the module material, planning and organizing a project, choosing a life cycle model, and there are podcasts more on life cycle models. Development life cycle that would best support this project. So far my planning seems to be develop an overall structure and then iterate through it many times as I add new ideas or think of a better approach. I think the same approach will be needed for the project development. Plan in outline what the major milestones of the project will be, then iterate repeatedly through that stage to develop it, including fully testing and writing it up, before moving on to the next major component. I don't know enough about the detail of how the project will work in order to plan, design and develop with a single pass-through. So now we've established the key structure of the proposed project, starting to select and evaluate relevant information sources that describe related work and point to possible methods to be used, recording notes in your journal, record a proper reference now in case you need it later, and for references use the Cite Them Right, and there's a link here to cite them right in the university library. Keep a browser bookmarks folder as well, and keep it organized so that you can quickly reload any useful source again. Identifying resources, especially data, access to people, etc., that are crucial for success, and assure yourself that these will be available when needed. So, must start a list of sources by topics, inline HTML editors, Python, JavaScript, HTML, CSS, database, security, access to people. I really need others to test the user interface and application to see if it is intuitive to use and has the options that people want to use in that way when they want to use them. Where will I find these people? And the student notes that initially they forgot to add their level 3 modules to this list. They are an important basis for all of these aspects. Need to identify those aspects I need to revise. Identifying and evaluating your own skills and knowledge that are crucial for the success of this project. Identifying essential skills that you lack and starting to develop them. Student: I am confident that I have the ability to develop in Python, HTML and CSS, but I think my knowledge of JavaScript might be a little weak. In all these aspects I will need to be continually looking up new detail. I do need to develop my knowledge of security of all aspects of an application like this. I do need to develop knowledge of usability and access issues. Undertaking some exploratory work to begin the project work. I have identified the inline HTML editor as a critical aspect for this project, so it is essential that I investigate this aspect as first priority and use it as a way of getting into the habit of doing it correctly with notes in my journal, keeping references and doing a systematic evaluation. That means planning. So what inline HTML editors are available? So exploratory work for inline HTML editors. What are the criteria that I should use to evaluate them? Firstly, that they work. Free to use, open source, a license I can use to share my app, easy to integrate, multiple separate editable regions on a page, a good choice of editing options, intuitive to use, ability to add my own options to the editor menu, source code in active development, ability to select a style for the editor that matches my own page style, ability for the users of my application to select a style that suits them. Exploratory work continued. The student notes that they have kept journal notes for each section, the sites found, and summaries of inline editors, plus how much they match each of the criteria for the analysis. I was surprised by how many inline editors there are, but some are old and many are not free to use. Using my criteria, I narrowed it down to two top contenders, CKEditor and SummerNote. So this next slide is a table comparing CKEditor and SummerNote. They're both open source. CKEditor requires a license. SummerNote uses an MIT license. Free to use, CKEditor is only free to use under a license, and the source code of a project must be shared. So if there's anything commercial about it, the license could be expensive. For SummerNote, the MIT license, as long as you include the license with the SummerNote code, you can almost do what you like. Dependencies, SummerNote uses jQuery and Bootstrap, and both work in all major browsers. Continued. Adding my own options, it's more complicated in CKEditor than SummerNote. You can initialize options quite easily in SummerNote. Both are in active development. CKEditor has many choices of style. SummerNote, just the one set of icons that I can see. Suggests using Font Awesome for other icons. There is a custom button option, and you can use own SVG icons. Intuitive for the user, both work well. Integration. For CKEditor, I've created an HTML page with multiple editable areas. It works well with submit buttons and submits using my JavaScript code if the user clicks out the editable area. For SummerNote, I've created an HTML page with multiple editable areas. Works well with submit buttons. However, I want each editable area to save its content when the user clicks outside the editable area, but I seem to have a conflict each time the menu is clicked. Update a day later. I seem to have found a workable solution for this, but I will see if I can get any suggestions from the SummerNote forum as to how this can be improved. Further comment, have this solved, see code dated 9th February. Range of options, CKEditor has a huge range of options including export to Word. SummerNote has a much more limited range of options but includes the basics I need for my project. In conclusion, SummerNote does everything I need for my project and avoids potential licensing issues if I develop it further in the future. Initial integration is easier, far fewer editing options than CKEditor. Update after comparing the code for my static web pages to demonstrate these two editions. I can see that the code can be written in such a way that it is straightforward to switch from one inline editor to the other, so I can keep my options open for the future. I will use SummerNote to develop my project with the option to switch to CKEditor if users require options I cannot create in SummerNote. See the code in Appendix for the first assignment. Reflect on and review progress to date. Update time schedule. I think I'm ahead of where I expected to be at this early stage in the project. Update any elements from your project analysis and design that need to be changed as a result of your reflection. I've now selected SummerNote as the inline editor to use for the project and confirmed it will work with multiple separate editable areas on an HTML page. Record how your reflection has provided help with improving your skills and knowledge and improving how you approach the project. I have realized just how much planning what I need to achieve in a session helps me keep focused on my important priorities. That's a good start. Are you keeping your journal up to date? Yes, now. So next, focus on the first assignment, TMA01, and plan what I need to do again. Look again at the content of my Level 3 modules. Reread all the TMA01 instructions. Extract material as needed from my journal. Focus on how my project meets each of the learning outcomes for TMA01. Review what I've written for TMA01. Review again and update. Submit. That is the end of this tutorial. Do discuss any aspects in the module forum or the tutor group forum. Thank you for watching and listening.